My life has always been an impenetrable fortress built on mathematical logic and impeccable code, a stark contrast to the fleeting, glossy world my family desperately tried to inhabit. I am Cassidy Hayes, 33 years old, the founding CEO of Arbor Group, an elite property investment firm specializing in boutique hospitality and high-end residential real estate across Southern California. While my parents, Patricia and William Hayes, valued their pedigree and social appearances above all else, I valued equity, anonymity, and the cold, verifiable truth of a balance sheet. I live by meticulous planning, aggressive strategic acquisitions, and the principle that true power is never loud. My younger sister, Chloe, 28, meanwhile, was the family's prized, fragile ornament, a high-fashion, high-maintenance lifestyle influencer whose career peak was about to culminate in marriage to Liam Kensington, the sole heir to the centuries-old Kensington shipping and banking empire in San Diego. Chloe and Liam's wedding wasn't just a marriage, it was an ascension, a social coronation for the entire Hayes clan, promising a transition from old money with a decent address to indisputable, entrenched, untouchable power. The difference between Chloe and me was fundamental, a deep-seated philosophical chasm that served as the central fault line in our family. She mastered the art of being seen, admired, and gossiped about. I mastered the art of being unseen and silently feared in boardrooms. This dichotomy created a tension that felt like fine glass under immense pressure. While I quietly multiplied the Arbor Group's capital and stabilized historic properties, my parents were obsessed with Chloe's follower count, her perfect engagement ring photo shoots, and her seating arrangements at the most exclusive charity galas. I was the reliable, financially mighty black sheep, too blunt, too private, and fatally, too successful to be conventionally charming or submissive. My lack of social flair, my refusal to play their elaborate vapid games, was in their eyes, a permanent smudge on their perfect social canvas. They only tolerated my existence because my financial success provided an essential, and utterly secret, safety net. The venue Chloe and Liam chose was the ultimate statement of exclusivity, the Ironwood Manor. It was a historic Spanish colonial estate set on sweeping, sun-drenched hills of vineyards in La Jolla, a location renowned for its Gilded Age architecture, its absolute privacy, and its stringent booking requirement, a minimum of 2 years in advance and a non-negotiable, astronomical price tag. The manor was reserved for a full week of pre-wedding galas and events, a gargantuan, ostentatious expense designed to signal the absolute peak of the Hayes-Kensington union. They intended to host a royal court. The manor was their throne room. The wedding date was set for just 3 weeks away. I had received a beautifully calligraphed invitation 6 months prior, delivered with the faint, chilly scent of obligation rather than affection. I had accepted, purchased a custom emerald green velvet gown from a New York atelier, and was prepared to endure the social discomfort for the sake of that thin, brittle thread of family duty. I told myself I would attend, offer a polite, distant smile, and then retreat back to my fortress of work, my balance sheets my only comfort. Then the phone call came. It wasn't from Chloe, who rarely spoke to me unless she needed my coding expertise for her website or a 5-figure check for a new business venture. It was from the wedding planner, Debra Stone. Debra Stone was a titan in the event planning industry, known for her ice-cold professional detachment, her military-grade precision, and her ability to execute impossible, flawless events for the world's elite. Her involvement alone was a powerful status symbol, a guarantee of absolute perfection. The time on my calendar read 11 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was mid-closing on a complex, multi-million-dollar portfolio acquisition in downtown San Diego when my executive assistant, Maria, patched the call through to my private line. I could hear the thin, perfectly modulated tension in Debra's voice, even over the encrypted connection. "Ms. Hayes," Debra began, her tone as crisp and cold as freshly laundered linen. "This is Debra Stone. I am calling regarding the wedding of Chloe Hayes and Liam Kensington. I must ask that you listen to this message in its entirety without interruption." I slowly closed the acquisition file in front of me, the sound of the expensive leather folder snapping shut echoing loudly in the silence of my CEO office. I knew, with the clarity of a perfectly executed algorithm, precisely what this call was. It was the professional chill that precedes bad news, meticulously delivered to maximize the emotional distance. I am calling to convey a sensitive message, and I must assure you I am acting strictly under the explicit, written direction of the Hayes family, she stated, immediately erecting a legal firewall. Due to recent unforeseen logistical constraints at the Ironwood Manor, specifically a necessary last-minute capacity reduction dictated by updated fire code, combined with a paramount necessity to ensure a completely harmonious and distraction-free environment for the Kensington guests, who, as you know, prioritize absolute decorum, the family has made a painful but necessary decision. I remained silent, allowing the carefully rehearsed monologue to unfold. I imagined her reading from a typed script, devoid of any genuine human emotion. On behalf of Patricia and William Hayes, I am formally communicating the rescission of your invitation to all wedding events, including the rehearsal dinner and the ceremony. The family felt, given certain long-standing tensions and the limited, critical nature of the revised guest list, that it would be best for all parties if you did not attend. This is simply to avoid any potential awkwardness or social difficulty on what must be Chloe's perfect, flawless day. Your RSVP has been officially voided. Awkwardness, tensions, social difficulty. The clinical euphemisms were the cruelest part, replacing the brutal honesty of, "We don't want your quiet, awkward presence spoiling our grand, fragile performance." They hadn't uninvited me because of a seating chart. They had done it because they feared my mere existence. The successful, single, emotionally unavailable elder sister would cast an unflattering shadow on Chloe's dazzling, superficial triumph. They saw me as an unsightly detail that needed to be surgically removed before the curtain rose. "I appreciate your professionalism, Debra," I said, my voice low and steady, revealing none of the freezing devastation that had just settled in my chest. It wasn't just the uninvitation. It was the fact that my own blood had hired a third-party contractor, a high-priced corporate assassin, to deliver the final, humiliating message, refusing even to face me. "Please convey my sincere best wishes to Chloe and Liam. And Debra, when you communicate with my parents, please note that I received their message and fully understood the reason for the rescission." "Of course, Ms. Hayes. I will document this conversation for the family records. Thank you for your understanding." Click. The call ended. The silence that followed was absolute, suffocating. The initial rush of pain, the deep cold sting of familial rejection, began to crystallize into something sharp, hard, and professionally precise. The grief was quickly overwritten by a strategic imperative. I sat there for 5 minutes, motionless, absorbing the emotional data. They had chosen to fight me on the ground of social status and hierarchy, using exclusion as their weapon. They did not know that this was the very ground I had learned to acquire, restructure, and own. I reached for a specific labeled file, not the acquisitions file, but a private one I kept locked in a fire-rated safe drawer. Opening it revealed a complex organizational chart, detailing the convoluted corporate structure of one of my most profitable and most carefully shielded investment assets, Manor Hospitality LLC. This entity, a wholly owned subsidiary of my primary holding company, Arbor Group, was the legal owner and operator of the very estate where the wedding was to take place. The Ironwood Manor. I had acquired the manor 2 years earlier as a distressed asset needing sophisticated management. I purchased it not under my name, Cassidy Hayes, but through a labyrinthine series of shell corporations, corporate trusts, and blind management agreements specifically designed to shield the beneficial owner's identity. It was a brilliant, profitable acquisition, known only to my general counsel and my CFO. My family, deeply entrenched in their belief that real power only comes from inherited wealth and social lineage, would never have conceived that their eldest daughter, the awkward coding geek, could secretly own the very foundation of their social aspiration. The manor was mine. The realization hit me with the exhilaration of a perfectly executed, long-term strategic play. The wedding was in 3 short weeks. The timing was tight, but the opportunity for proportional, corporate retribution was exquisite. My vengeance would not be emotional or petty. It would be corporate, surgical, and absolutely devastating to their carefully constructed social standing. The Kensington name demanded flawless perfection. The Hayes name was about to deliver a public failure of such epic proportions that it would resonate in every elite circle in Southern California for a decade. I immediately called my chief legal officer, Marcus Thorne, a man known for his unflappable demeanor, his encyclopedic knowledge of contract law, and his ruthless efficiency. Marcus, I stated, bypassing all pleasantries, I need you to pull and forensically analyze the contract between Manor Hospitality LLC and Chloe Hayes/Liam Kensington for the Ironwood Manor booking. I need it prioritized immediately. The Kensington wedding? It's a massive booking, Cassidy. Everything's gold-plated. No issues reported by site management, he replied, confusion sharp in his voice. I want the termination clauses, specifically those related to breach of client venue conduct, moral risk, and administrative fiat, I commanded. Find me the sharpest, cleanest blade in that contract, Marcus. I need a legally unassailable, immediate exit for the venue. I paused, hardening my voice into the tone I used only for maximum pressure. The client's agent, the planner, used venue communication channels and her professional role to conduct a personal, discriminatory act against a party directly related to the client. We need to frame this as irreparable damage to the Manor's professional integrity and neutrality. Marcus inhaled sharply, the sound a small hiss of shock. How soon is immediate, Cassidy? This is a PR and liability nightmare. Moving a high society wedding with 48 hours notice is unheard of. I want the termination notice physically delivered at 4 p.m. this Wednesday. That is precisely 48 hours before their rehearsal dinner is scheduled to begin. The timing was everything. It had to be too late to relocate, too late to salvage. Cassidy, they will sue for breach of contract, emotional distress, loss of anticipated revenue. It will be catastrophic for the Manor's brand equity, even if we are technically in the right. They will sue a subsidiary of Arbor Group, I corrected him calmly, the cost already factored into my operating budget. I authorize you to settle immediately for 200% of their lost deposits and all non-refundable vendor costs, whatever it takes to enforce the termination legally and cleanly. The cost of a settled lawsuit, even at this massive premium, is insignificant compared to the value of this specific outcome, the enforcement of the contract's integrity and the lesson delivered. Marcus understood. His job wasn't to question the motive, only the legality. Understood. I will draft the documents citing Section 7.1, the Client Conduct and Brand Integrity Clause. The planner, acting as the client's agent, utilized her role and the perceived authority of the Manor to execute an act of personal humiliation, thus jeopardizing the neutral, high-end atmosphere we promise. It's an aggressive argument, but the clause is broad enough. The next day, the termination documents arrived. They were flawless, ironclad, and signed by my general counsel. At 3:30 p.m. on Wednesday, with the rehearsal dinner 48 hours away, I drove my black, unmarked SUV up the winding, cypress-lined driveway to the Ironwood Manor. The air hummed with feverish, perfect pre-wedding activity. The air smelled sharply of expensive Casablanca lilies and custom-cut grass. Trestle tables were being dressed, the catering staff was setting up their immaculate, elaborate staging tents, and in the distance, a faint, classical sound system ran a final check. Debra Stone, looking immaculate and utterly stressed in a tailored dove-gray suit, was barking orders into a headset, the undisputed queen of her temporary domain. I walked past the security gate, where the attendant, recognizing the CEO of the Arbor Group who occasionally visited, immediately waved me through with a deferential nod. I entered the Manor's small, quiet administrative office, the nerve center of the operation. Debra Stone was inside, hunched over a massive, color-coded binder of seating charts. She looked up, annoyance flashing across her face at the unexpected intrusion, then froze entirely when her eyes locked on mine. Her usual marble-like composure shattered, replaced by a terrible flicker of recognition, dread, and pure, visceral panic. "Miss Hayes, what are you doing here? This area is strictly restricted," she stammered, scrambling to her feet so quickly her chair scraped loudly across the tile floor. Her headset hung precariously from one ear. "I'm here to finalize some paperwork, Debra," I replied, my voice dangerously devoid of inflection, as I placed the thick manila envelope onto her immaculate oak desk. The weight of the envelope seemed to pull all the light and focus onto itself. Paperwork. I don't handle the venue's paperwork. You need to leave immediately before I call security, she insisted, glancing frantically toward the windows and the busy grounds, terrified of being seen in a crisis. I think you do, actually. I stepped closer, leaning over the desk slightly, invading her personal space. My voice dropped to a near whisper meant only for her. Debra, when you called me 2 days ago, you told me that, under the express written direction of Patricia and William Hayes, I was being uninvited from my own sister's wedding to avoid family tensions and awkwardness. Is that correct? She swallowed hard, her composure dissolving. I was following client instructions, Miss Hayes. I merely executed the family's wishes as their appointed agent. You certainly did. And in doing so, you acted as an agent of the client, Chloe Hayes, while operating on the premises of the Ironwood Manor. You utilized your professional role, your access to venue communications, and the reputation of this exclusive estate to facilitate a public, cruel act of personal discrimination against the daughter of the primary client. That, Debra, is precisely where your clients breached their contract, and where you became complicit in that breach. I pushed the heavy manila envelope across the desk, stopping it right under her nose. Open it. With a trembling hand, she ripped open the flap and pulled out the 2 documents. The first was the formal termination notice, citing the exact breach clause, Section 7.1. The second was a single sheet of paper with my company's stylized logo, Arbor Group, proudly displayed at the top, clearly identifying me, Cassidy Hayes, as the Chief Executive Officer and the ultimate beneficial owner of Manor Hospitality LLC. Debra Stone went absolutely ashen. The color drained entirely from her face, leaving her professional makeup looking like a grotesque, painted mask of despair. She stared at the logo, then at the termination notice, then back at me. The realization that the awkward family reject was her ultimate boss, and now her executioner, was the final, fatal blow to her carefully maintained facade. You own this place? This whole estate? All of it? She rasped, her voice cracking, her professional veneer dissolving into dust. Ido. And as the owner, I have a fiduciary duty to uphold the integrity, neutrality, and professional detachment of my venue. I explained, the lesson cold and sharp. Your clients, the Hayes and Kensington families, have demonstrated a clear willingness to use the services and location of the manor to execute personal, hostile family dramas. That is a direct, flagrant violation of the Conduct and Brand Integrity Clause, which protects us from moral risk and reputational damage from disruptive clientele. This is an immediate, forced removal. But the wedding is in 2 days. My entire career. The flowers are here. The Kensington family will destroy me, she pleaded, tears finally spilling over and ruining her flawless foundation. Tears not for me or the destroyed wedding, but for the immediate, existential threat to her own reputation and bottom line. Your career is your own responsibility, Debra. My family chose to exclude me from their perfect narrative. I am simply enforcing the rules of my property. I stood up, adjusting the cuff of my bespoke suit jacket, feeling a profound sense of cold, perfect finality. The contract is formally terminated. Manor Hospitality will wire the Hayes family 200% of their non-refundable deposit, a generous, no-fault settlement for the termination. You have until 7 p.m. tonight to dismantle and remove all perishable items, and by 9 a.m. tomorrow, the entire site must be cleared. Effective 5 p.m. today, the Ironwood Manor is closed. If Chloe, Liam, or my parents attempt to set foot on this property after the curfew, they will be met by private security and charged with criminal trespassing. I had used the ultimate power, ownership, to enforce a legal and moral consequence on my family's social ambition. They wanted to stage a perfect event built on exclusivity. I proved that I controlled the very ground on which that exclusivity rested, and that I could and would withdraw the privilege to stand there. I looked down at the devastated wedding planner, who was now weeping silently, a perfect picture of entitled, suddenly powerless failure. Debra, you told me I was uninvited by family orders. I finished, my voice like ice, delivering the final, echoing blow. Tell my sister, my mother, and my father that they too are now uninvited from the Ironwood Manor, by the owner's orders, and tell them that the grounds will be used this weekend for a private, professional charity retreat, a celebration of stability and professionalism, things they never valued, and now can never buy. I walked out of the office, past the now halting caterers and the elaborate floral arrangements that would never grace an aisle. I drove away, leaving behind the immediate, inevitable, and chaotic implosion that would soon make headlines. The next morning, news of the spectacular, last-minute cancellation of the Kensington Hayes wedding was all over the society pages, thinly disguised as an unforeseen legal dispute with the venue. The Hayes family and the planner Debra were socially and professionally ruined by the sudden, inexplicable failure. They had built their world on appearances, and I had simply proved that I owned the foundation they stood on, and I had withdrawn the privilege to stand there. It was the only way to prove that the black sheep, the one who was too awkward to attend, was the only one who truly mattered.